Howdy, you guys, and welcome to Not Your Average video about Starshot, Space Circus Fever. Now, you might already know a little bit about this game, but did you know there was a movie based on this game? Sort of. In this video, I aim to clarify what the heck the Space Circus movie is, what am I talking about, because I make a lot of content around this, and I want people to know about it. I think it's super cool. So for any of you who don't know about this game, Starshot Space Circus Fever is a platformer game for the PC and the N64 that was developed by Infogrames in 1998. In this game, you play as this little guy named Starshot, who is the star juggler. He has the power to shoot these little stars all over the place, and he can, direct where they go, and you can also use that to blast your enemies to smithereens. He hangs out with his little robot friends, Willfall and Willfly, and he goes on this little adventure all over all these different planets to find new circus acts for the show. Now, your rival in this game is the Virtuous Circus, which is this futuristic, virtual reality-themed circus that actually duplicates rarities from all over the universe and then destroys the originals. So the idea is, we want to get all the cool new circus acts before they get their mitts on them. This game was Infogrames' first fully 3D platformer, so obviously that posed some challenges to these guys. But despite its flaws, it still has a lot going for it. This game is full of all sorts of colorful characters and wacky worlds, and the kind of sense of humor that really went over your head as a kid, but then when you revisit it as an adult, you're like, what? The guys that worked on this game were absolute goofballs. The company gave them a lot of creative freedom with this project, and it really shows. This game is all sorts of wacky. And can we just look at these guys for a second? What is going on in this picture? For any of you wondering if there was a lot of pot involved with the creation of this game, it looks like you were right. Now, I grew up playing this game on N64, but then later on in high school, I discovered the PC version, and honestly, it's gotta be the best version of the game. The graphics are better, the game runs more smoothly, there's even full voice acting. This is just the best way to experience Starshot. Check this out.
You guys are going to go to Killer Expo and find me that detector.
That assignment is rather vague.
We're the ones who will be vague if that bomb explodes.
All right, I'm going.
Killer Expo.
What's this all about?
It's very, very strange. All my tanks have gone crazy.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
I'd love to see that. Na-na-na-na-na. Could you work the word dangerous into your pitiful vocabulary someday?
We gotta go and see what's happened to the giant tank.
And for anyone who's interested in checking out this game, it's actually available on Steam. But enough about the game for now. So what the heck is the Space Circus movie? Well, unfortunately, this movie never did make it to the big screen, but it does exist as a script, an entire screenplay. Back in, I want to say 1999, when they had finished working on the game, the CEO of the company, Bruno Bonnell, asked the executive producer of the game, Xavier Shawn, yo, you want to make a movie script based on this game? And he's like, alright. So he started coming up with some new ideas, and then within a couple months, a year maybe, he had an entire movie script written. He also sent it off to somebody to make an English translation of the script. So these files got sent off to several animation companies, but unfortunately none of them really picked up the project. Probably because the game itself didn't do very well. It only sold, under 90,000 copies, which for Infogram at the time was bad. Very bad. But the entire script exists both in English and French, as well as several concept drawings, and there's also a brief synopsis written around the film too. Since nothing ever really became of this film, nobody knew anything about it until 2018, when Xavier Shawn shared all the files for the movie with someone who interviewed him about the development of the game. When I first found out about this, I was super curious, and I even emailed Xavier Shawn being like, yo, I'm a big fan of this game. I was just wondering, is there a French version of this movie script? And he's like, yeah, of course, I can send it to you. You must be Space Circus #1 fan, I can't refuse. And that was a really fun interaction. We ended up keeping in touch a little bit after that, and I even got to meet the guy in person one day, but that's a story for another day. Anyway, all of that is to say, everything that officially exists of this movie is the English and French version of the script, a synopsis, and a collection of concept drawings. But that isn't all of the content that exists around this film. I've also been working over the years to create more concept art, lots of drawings of different characters and scenes from the movie, so a lot of what you'll see in this video is my own content too. So now that we know what this movie is, what exactly is the plot of Space Circus? Well, the story centers around the Space Circus and a lot of familiar characters like Will Fall, Will Fly, Captain No Brakes, and Mr. Starcash, but a lot of the characters are either changed or completely replaced altogether. For example, Mr. Starcash is still the director of the Space Circus, but the ringmaster is now this guy named Nox Lebo, who looks both friendly and terrifying, but he's not scary enough to be an evil twist villain, don't worry about it. And probably the strangest change they made is that Starshot isn't even in the movie at all. You'd think Starshot would at least be in the Starshot movie, but no, he's actually replaced with two different characters. The first one, who's the main character of the movie, is this Earthling astronaut named Stan, who gets rescued, or more like abducted, by the Space Circus because they're looking for a replacement for their star juggler. Now wait a minute, replacement? What happened to the other star juggler? Do you mean he got kidnapped, just like at the end of the game, when Starshot got kidnapped by the Virtuous Circus? You'd be right, but it's still not Starshot. Their former star juggler is actually this guy named John Glur, some sort of magical little prince-looking guy. At the beginning of the film, we see that John Glur has been kidnapped by robots from the Virtuous Center, which is basically just a rebranded version of the Virtuous Circus from the game. Wolfgang von Ravel and his evil robots are at it again, capturing rarities all over the universe and duplicating them for their shows, and then destroying the originals. And so John Glur is sent to the disappearance department where he will await his demise. Meanwhile, we see a young astronaut named Stan floating in space. Stan cheated his way into NASA just because he dreamed of being among the stars. But that didn't go so well for him. Everything starts going awry. His computer is malfunctioning, things are setting on fire, his oxygen is running out, he is about to die. But luckily, in the nick of time, he's saved by Will Fall and his little army of Will Flies, which, by the way, Will Fall has arms now? What? And he's taken aboard the Space Circus. There, Will Fall explains to him that if he doesn't find a new star juggler fast, it's curtains. So he tells Stan, while you're here, you're not gonna be an Earthling, you are gonna be a star juggler. So with a little bit of persuasion, and with Stan really not having much of a choice to escape this situation, Stan decides to become the Space Circus' new star juggler. He puts these mentoliters over his ears, which give him the power to create the stars and master the art of star casting. The ringmaster, Nox Lebo, is quite skeptical of this guy and doesn't think he has what it takes. So Stan is going to have to work extra hard if he wants to prove himself. As he begins his training, he meets several other circus friends like Bomback the Time Magician and Slick the Chain Acrobat. He also meets the lovely Miss Starling, the greatest sharpshooter in the galaxy, who, fun fact, is actually a character who was cut from the original game. Ever since the beginning of development of Starshot, Miss Starling was planned to be a second character you'd be able to play as, but she ended up getting cut later on. And speaking of characters from the game, there's also this little guy named Blatt, who's the Target Practice. He's based on the Target Practice guys from the Missile Center. Not a very glorious job to have, if you ask me. With lots of practice, Stan becomes a great star juggler. But does he have what it takes for the Space Circus' next show? They land on the planet Atenus, and when they get there, they realize that all of its inhabitants are completely absorbed in these VR headsets from none other than the Virtuous Center. That's right, once again, the Virtuous Center has arrived on the planet first to try to steal all the Space Circus customers. But the Space Circus has a trick up its sleeve. They win over the attention of the residents of Atenus with none other than their amazing missile parade! They sound out all sorts of little missiles and robots and confetti and music and streamers, and they repaint the town. And with advertising like that, who wouldn't want to come to the show? So they manage to pull together a decent crowd, and it's time for Stan to show what he's got up on the big stage. He's a little bit nervous at first, but he ends up putting on an amazing show, full of sparkling stars and shimmering planets, and a whole beautiful nebula under the big top. Everything is going absolutely wonderfully, until disaster strikes! Spies from the Virtuous Center sneak in, and they actually completely wreck Stan's show. They sabotage everything. Everything's blowing up, all of his stars are spinning out of orbit and blasting into the crowd. There's mass chaos, and Stan's reputation is ruined. But this wasn't the only goal of the spies. All of this chaos served as a distraction for them to sneak off and capture Miss Starling and send her off to the Virtuous Center, where she too is going to be duplicated and destroyed forever. Luckily, Stan corners these spies and gets them to spill the beans on the location of the Virtuous Center. Then he rallies his newfound friends together and they go off to the Virtuous Center to rescue Miss Starling and put an end to Wolfgang von Ravel's tyranny once and for all. But can they manage to defeat the evil horde of robots inside? What sorts of devious traps await them inside the Virtuous Center? Will they ever find the original Star Juggler? Will he be rescued? Will the ending of this film be a terrible cliffhanger that'll make you want to bang your head against the wall, just like the game? Find out in Space Circus, the movie. That's so cheesy, shut the fuck up. All the information in this video you can actually check out on the Starshot Space Circus wiki, which, of course, I'm a big enough nerd to make the dang wiki. There's a whole page just about the movie there, and it's a lot more concise than this video. You can find out information about all the individual characters and some other things, as well as all the official files for the movie. So head over there if you're still curious. I had so much fun reading through this script, especially since I was a fan of the game. It was so awesome to see that there was sort of like a sequel expanding on the Space Circus universe. There's all these new characters and these new places. That was just so cool. So is there any future for this movie? With Infogrames being kind of a dead company nowadays, it's kind of hard to tell, but we do know that the movie script itself should be fine to take some creative liberties with. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, I actually got to meet Xavier Shawn in person, and I got to interview him about the movie and the game and stuff, and actually just hanging out with the guy was really cool. And I asked him about who owns the rights to the film. He said that Infogrames gave him the official rights to the script, and it's registered in the French Writers Guild, so it officially belongs to him. So anything that happens with this movie is really his call. But he did kind of give me personally permission to do whatever I wanted with the movie. So you have all the rights to the movie.
Yeah. But you can do whatever you want.
Okay. So I have your official pardon to do whatever I want with
Yeah. I mean, who's gonna do? I mean, you love the story, the universe, the characters. I don't think I would do something with it. So it's okay.
So, in a weird roundabout way, I'm kind of like the official appointed co-author of Space Circus now. I don't know what to do with this power. But what am I doing with this power? As I mentioned before, I've been making a lot of concept art for this movie over the years, just trying to bring the characters back to life, and also coming up with new designs for some of the characters that were never really drawn out or anything before. So since Space Circus is kind of in my hands now, it's sorta kinda canon. But anyone who feels like making anything around this movie is totally free to. I actually have a really cool friend of mine who's made some art of the characters, and that's really, really fun, because, let's face it, this is a pretty lonely fandom. But that isn't to say I haven't gotten so much joy out of it. Even though it's totally obscure and not a lot of people can really enjoy this movie, it's just been so much fun to bring this weird, forgotten universe back to life. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you got a little bit of intrigue out of some weird, lost, obscure project based on some wacky video game that nobody really knows anything about. At the very least, congratulations, you've wasted your time with something educational today. But yeah, now you know something you didn't know about Starshot Space Circus Fever. I don't really know how to end this video, but I don't know, have fun, keep doing what you love, keep liking your obscure random things. I've gotten so much joy out of this wacky little game over the years, and I'm not about to stop now.